Hello, I'm Sean Richards of Not a Yes Man's Economics. This week what I thought I'd talk to you about is applying economics to financial markets. Also, the way that one can look at these things in terms of investment. Why is this on my mind? Well, it was rammed home last night if you were in the UK. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the politics, but an implication of it. You see, there were loads of forecasts before last night's Brexit vote in the UK, the so-called meaningful vote, or as it turned out, some now call it the meaningless vote, that the pound would then fall heavily, UK pound. So, and one forecast I saw from one place that it might fall to 126.5 against the US dollar, which would have been quite a drop, depending on where you start from, 4 or 5 cents. However, reality was very different to this. Because you see, actually, once the news came out, which was overall pretty bad in terms of the vote for the government and the chances of them getting their deal through, the UK pound rallied, moved above 116 versus the euro, moved above 131 versus the US dollar. What this tells us, to my mind, is that there are two factors at play here. One is, be very, very careful what the media are telling you, because quite often what they're saying is influenced by what they would like to happen for whatever purpose. The next is, there's a danger in going through market type analysis for not dissimilar reasons really. They get focused in on something, and after all, if they already knew that, then that's where the exchange rate would have been in the first place. So they're no easy bets. Also, an element of humility is replied. It's something that I used to do for a living, not currencies in the main. My speciality was interest rates and bonds. And again there, what they teach you through is humility. You do well if, say, you're right 70 or 80% of the time. In fact, probably very well. Pay your costs, over time make a profit. The idea that you're always going to be right is a fantasy. Moving on to sort of difference between expectations and how things actually happen. Today in the UK, we're facing a situation of the spring statement. Again, there'll be lots of sort of loaded comments about it. But the reality is that the UK public finances, just looked at in isolation, have done very well. Taxes have come in, and there's been some control over public spending. A lot of debate over the definition of the term austerity. And much of it, I think, has been wrong because public spending has risen. But there have been some areas where it's been cut back. And we've managed at least to get it down to roughly the inflation rate sometimes. But my point here is the numbers have way outperformed what the official forecasters would tell you. For example, in the UK, the equivalent of the Congressional Budget Office that's in the United States is the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility. However, I have a rule for this, and the first rule of OBR Club is that it's always wrong. It's demonstrated this more over the past few years by the fact that it's continually said the UK public finances are going to get worse, so we'll run a higher deficit. That's what it said. The reality is the deficits have fallen. In fact, over the last year or two, it's fallen quite quickly. The latest numbers for January showed quite a sharp change, actually. Now, some of that may be because it's income tax season in the UK and some was paid in early, we don't know. But the general broad trend was a lot better than what we've seen before. So the UK now, in terms, isn't actually borrowing very much. If we move to how people were setting the scene, I remember the Financial Times about 2.5 years ago saying that the UK would have a 100 billion Brexit black hole in its public finances. Interesting one, that. Now, of course, we haven't set out the timetable yet, and Brexit hasn't happened, but we're halfway through their time, because they put a 5-year time limit on it, nearly. And what have we seen is the numbers are far better than that. In fact, we've moved ahead rather than going behind. So this is quite a complicated area. As we come to the spring statement later in the UK, and I'll broaden this out to things around the world now, one needs to be very, very careful about what you're told in assumptions. Remember, these things are in the market, and unless you're very, very careful, you'll find that you're misled. Thank you.